Let's go secret weapon. Wait, should we have a vote for which one goes first? No. I haven't heard enough noise yet. I haven't heard enough noise.
Fun share.
Brother's gonna work it out.
Secret weapon. I don't know. Do I need to analysis here? Secret weapon plugins. I mean, this kind of implies that they are a secret. And I gave a talk last month where I went to bat for a lot of sound toy stuff. It's really awesome. But so pretty much everything I've done this year, I've used the Melted Sounds Whoosh Reactor Ensemble on, and it has been described to me by many people whose sounds I respect as basically being like cheating, because it sounds really good. It's probably why I use it a lot, because why wouldn't you? So what it is basically is a reactor ensemble that is a Doppler engine into which you can load 4 source samples that become basically your whoosh in and whoosh out, and then you can load up to 4 impact samples that trigger at the middle of the reactor or the Doppler envelope. And you have all sorts of awesome controls for adjusting where those impacts happen, how the sort of like travel time of blending through the 4 sounds that you've had randomly selected from your 4 whooshes kind of happens. I guess it's tough to explain, but you basically jam content in it and you can use it to make suck-ins, whooshes, impacts, all sorts of stuff just by playing around with the envelope. It becomes super powerful when you load your own stuff in there. So I use it a ton because it requires a lot of upfront work to create stuff with that sounds like your own. Am I getting called out?
No, not yet. I just got it working.
He's doing fine. Basically, it's a sampler, so it's great for making tons of variations, or if you know you are working on something like, say, a character or weapon that needs a cohesive palette and a lot of stuff for it. If you just need to make one variation of one sound, do not use whoosh. You'll pretty much waste your time. I'd say my sound design process this year has been like 80% making cool stuff and then carefully snipping it, naming it, and storing it into a spot to then load into whoosh, and then like 15% working within whoosh and adjusting stuff while record is on. And then by the time I actually have to put stuff on the timeline, I'm basically already done, which is really nice. Because it means that I can get away from my bad habit of stacking just crap loads of DSP and running plugins on tracks, which I'm really bad about doing because I got used to the old punch preview mode in Pro Tools and just automating across everywhere and blowing my computer up. So by rendering everything out offline, it's like my kind of way of audio suiting things that I'm just dropping samples on. You can get a lot of really cool sounds out of it. You slowly learn about what you want to put in there in terms of, you basically end up cutting lots of things that work as loops or have soft envelopes that can be grain delayed or stretched out to be able to run across the full sort of Doppler, and you put those in your 4 source tracks. And then a variety of impacts and neat tails and things, and gosh, I don't know. I mean, does anybody like use whoosh and have any questions about it?
Is this a Soundmorph whoosh, or is this?
By Melted Sounds, it's a reactor ensemble.
Okay.
It's super rad. The two things that I love the most about it are one, the engine itself just sounds great. You can stretch the length of these whooshes and Dopplers and all sorts of things that you don't need to make a Doppler and that it pitch ramps and goes every time. It does not have to be like that. You can adjust various dials so that pitch isn't even a factor, dampening isn't even a factor, amplitude isn't even a factor. So if you just want straight, pipe cleaners of a loop of a bunch of stuff blended together, you can either click it to have it auto run and loop through, just grabbing random stuff from the sampler and making little whooshes for you like the Charles Deanan type thing, or you can disable that, go into manual mode, and just scrub on the timeline and across the impact playheads and do like cool gestural stuff in which if you're just recording the whole time, you get a combined stream of all your things interacting in neat ways. And then when you're done with that, snip it off, crossfade some stuff, move it to the end and make loops. So it's really good for doing steady movement too. It kicks ass and it's like $40 right now, so go buy it.
I second the whoosh thing. I don't use it a ton. Something similar to it is S-Layer. I definitely use that a ton. Like, I don't do UI without it. It's just a pain in the ass to do UI without S-Layer. For me, again, a lot of prep work to get it set up, but once it is set up and you have a palette made, it's just like going, oh my god, this is so amazing. And then the work is just like tossing out the garbage and picking selects, but you have a shit ton of source. I guess I can't say specifically about a plugin that I really like, but I'm going to talk about my sort of like end chain that I put on most of my sessions. So I do abilities and weapons for Destiny, and so most of them are like big and loud sounds that need punch, but in different sorts of frequency ranges. So I have a mid-side mastering chain on all of my sessions. And I don't mean that I like encode and decode my sounds that way, but like I have all of my sounds going to an MS bus, and then I have two auxes that are both listening to that MS bus, and on one of them I just have the center, and on the other one I just have the sides. So again, no encoding, I'm just only listening to the center and the sides there, and I do different EQ and compression and other sweetening on the center part of the sound compared to the stereo parts of the sound. So I usually add some like low-end oomph and compression like that on the center because you want your center mostly monoed. It sounds stereo, bass, and sub sounds fine in headphones, but as soon as you're in a system with bass management, you'll start phasing, canceling your own sub if it's not monoed sound. So I do that with my center track, and I usually add some like high-end airiness only to the stereo or to the sides, and I can quickly change the stereo width of a sound, just the impression of the sound, just by balancing those two tracks, and I'm not like doing any sort of weird phasing, collapsing different sounds. It's really just like the center is louder now, and it doesn't sound as stereo or vice versa. Another thing that I do on the center, especially for abilities, it's like when the Destiny guys go in their supers, there's a bunch of different sounds that play all on top of each other and all really important, but to make space for it, I have a series of Filter Freak 2s on my center and sometimes the side channels that like modulate a little bit depending on amplitude that goes through them, but I will trade off. This is kind of this is the secret sauce. I trade off which one I'm using every so often, so that the chunks that it's taking out aren't all uniform, right? So it's like this sound has a little bit of space taken out in like the low mids. This sound has space taken out in the mid mids and then the upper mids and that kind of stuff. So I am like building in some frequency control and design inside all of my assets so that they all read well even when they're all big and playing on top of each other. And I just have them all right next to each other and it's like, okay, this one's going to be the first one and then these ones over here are going to be the third one. And so I just enable them or disable them as I go and design.
Will and Chase.